Ladies and gentlemen, lend me your ears and your eyes. Diva Divine Light, live from Brooklyn, New York.
Know your lane for what you saying, yo. Silly with my 9 milli with the dilly, yo. When I be on the mic, yes, I do my duty, yo. While up in the club, I be while in the studio. You don't wanna violate, nigga, really and truly, yo. My main thug, nigga named Julio, he moody, yo. Like a nigga that'll slap me with the tulio. Bitch, nigga scared to death, act fruity, yo. Fuck that, look at shorty, she a little cutie, yo. The way you shake it, make me wanna get all in the booty, yo. With no lane for what you saying, yo.
Diva Divine Light.
Really my heart to me. Fucking seats what you got for me. Put more than hands with my eyes to see. Still $1 in the place to be. If you really my heart to me. Fucking seats what you got for me. Put more than hands with my eyes to see. Still $1 in the place to be. If you.
You're watching Diva, the Divine Light. A fun-loving, caring, passionate person who talks about sex, celebrity, and real-life issues, and even abuse. So hit that like button and make sure you share the show.
Really my heart to me. Fucking seats what you got for me. Put more than hands with my eyes to see. Still $1 in the place to be. If you really my heart to me. Fucking seats what you got for me. Put more than hands with my eyes to see. Still $1 in the place to be. If you really my heart to me. Fucking seats what you got for me. Put more than hands with my eyes to see. Still $1 in the place to be. If you really my heart to me. Fucking seats what you got for me. Put more than hands with my eyes to see. Still $1 in the place to be. If you.
Here comes the pitch, and it comes in wide. Another combo.
Hello, world. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back, y'all. Hello to my OCOV family in the building. Shout out to OCOV. We be winning over here all day, every day, where the haters love us. So, how are you, Miss Sonia, Miss Nunya, Miss West Coast, Miss Bev, Miss Queen? Now I see your picture. I don't know what was going on with your picture. That was weird too. I noticed that. Hey, Vanetta. Cheers. Les Smith. Miss Rogers. Hi, baby. Enjoy your lunch, mama. Black Diamond. What's up, lady? Good afternoon, everybody. So, we are going to finish up the Chronicles of Don the Con. So, I did want to go over every single last one of his documents, but like I said, he did a lot. They did a lot of movements going on up in there with this case. And the most recent one that I was going to do had to do with the charges. So I went over the document and I looked at it, and they basically copied exactly what the government said. They didn't have any disagreements about the charges. They just added a couple of little things as far as like proving his innocence and stuff like that. So I was like, bore me with the details. I don't want to hear about it. I'm not even going to read it. So I swapped that document, but we're on to the next one. And the next one that they had posted, which was June 27th, was defendant Russell's proposed voir dire questions. So this is Don Russell's proposed questions to the jurors for jury selection. So let's just get into it. It says that defendant Don Russell, through counsel and pursuant to Rule 23 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, submits the following questions that he respectfully requests the court to include in its examination of prospective jurors, in addition to those submitted by the government. Defendant has also filed a motion in limine to employ a jury questionnaire, which includes his proposed questionnaire. Many of the following questions are also contained in that proposed questionnaire. Mr. Russell respectfully reserves the right to make supplemental proposals to question prospective jurors and to his proposed questionnaire, as well as to object to proposed questions submitted by the government. Defendant has also filed a motion in limine to employ a jury questionnaire, which includes his proposed questionnaire. Many of the following questions are also contained in that proposed questionnaire. Mr. Russell respectfully reserves the right to make supplemental proposals to questions prospective jurors and to his proposed questionnaire, as well as to object to proposed questions submitted by the government, signed by Michael Friedman, who is his attorney, the lead attorney there. And the questions begin as: have you or anyone you know ever been the recipient of a threat? If so, please describe. Have you or anyone you know ever been accused of making a threat? If so, please describe. Are you familiar with R. Kelly, otherwise known as Robert Sylvester Kelly? If so, do you have any opinion about R. Kelly? Please describe. Do you have any opinion about R. Kelly that would prevent you from being fair and impartial in this case, if this case involves or references R. Kelly? If so, please describe. Have you watched any shows or movies about R. Kelly? If so, please describe. Have you heard of the documentary Surviving R. Kelly? Have you seen the documentary Surviving R. Kelly? Do you know anyone who has seen the documentary Surviving R. Kelly? Have you read online about R. Kelly? If so, what have you read? This case involves allegations related to an individual who is known publicly as a result of his profession in the music and entertainment business. Do you have any views or feelings about serving as a juror in a case where the defendant that has been accused of criminal conduct can be described as a celebrity or public figure? If so, what are those views? Have you or a friend or family member ever been accused of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, or sexual assault? Would that prevent you from being fair and impartial in this case? Have you or a friend or a family member ever been the victim of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, or sexual assault? Would that prevent you from being fair and impartial in this case? So those are the only questions that Don Russell wants to ask the juries, the prospective jurors. On to the next document. The next document has to do with the defendant Russell's notice of motion in limine to preclude expert cell site testimony. So here we have Don Russell trying to remove evidence that the government wants to put in, and that is a expert on cell site. And so they want to remove his testimony. Don the Con. Please take notice that upon the accompanying memorandum of law, defendant Don Russell, pursuant to rules 702, 704, 401, 403 of the Federal Rules of Evidence, will move the court before the Honorable Paul G. Gardifi at the United States Courthouse, 500 Pearl Street, courtroom 705, New York, New York, 1007, for an order precluding expert cell site testimony. And that was signed Michael Friedman. Okay, so he wants to remove this evidence that the government has against Don Russell. They don't want the expert to come in and talk about the cell site and how it pings over here and pings over there and the radius and things of this nature, right? Next document. Now, these were all done on June 27th, guys. Okay. The next document has to do with Defendant Russell's memorandum in support of motion in limine to preclude expert cell site testimony. So now he just did the motion in limine to preclude the cell expert. And here in this motion, he's explaining why he wants to have him removed. Okay? So let's get into that. All right. Introduction. The government has notified defendant Donnell Russell that it intends to offer a trial expert testimony from engineer Andrew Peterson regarding radio frequency design, engineering, and cell site location. So by this motion, Mr. Russell seeks to preclude Mr. Peterson's testimony for several reasons. First and foremost, Mr. Peterson's testimony and opinions are not necessary to assist the jury in understanding the evidence or determining a fact at issue. Second, the government notice fails to sufficiently describe Mr. Peterson's expert opinions and the data and methods underlying those opinions. So his testimony is inadmissible, even if it were necessary, which it is not. Background. The government's notice is attached as Exhibit 1. In summary, it lists 6 categories about which Mr. Peterson is expected to testify, and also several opinions to which he is likely to testify. The 6 categories generally pertain to the design, coverage, testing, and performance of cell sites for wireless devices. The government then notes that it expects Mr. Peterson to testify about the likely approximate locations of various cell phones relevant to this case at the times they connected to cell sites in December of 2018. And his belief that reliable conclusions can be drawn about the approximate location of a cell phone at the time of a cell phone site connection, especially when analyzing cell sites in urban areas that have dense cellular networks. They're going to see Exhibit 1, Part 2. That's going to describe that. Then the government also expects Mr. Peterson to testify that at the time of each connection to a particular cell site, which is the connected site, the relevant cell phone was likely located within a distance of the connected site that is slightly more than halfway between the connected site and the nearest adjacent cell site in a particular direction. Finally, the government expects Mr. Peterson to testify concerning his expert opinion of the location of those cell phones at multiple times on or about December 4th, 2018. Now, based on a draft presentation consisting of 7 slides attached to the notice, Exhibit B, and that'll be shown in a moment, and then the argument. The expert testimony is inadmissible under Rule 702. Federal Rule Evidence 702 provides that a witness who is qualified as an expert by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education may testify in the form of an opinion or otherwise if A, the expert's scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge will help the tier of fact to understand the evidence or to determine a fact and issue. B, the testimony is based on sufficient fact or data. C, the testimony is the product of reliable principles and methods. And D, the expert has reliably applied the principles and methods to the facts of the case. Testimony is properly characterized as expert only if it concerns matters that the average juror is not capable of understanding on his or her own. So he's just like, according to this 702, this is irrelevant because the fact is that this guy is going to bore the jury with the whole pinging here and pinging there. And it's going to confuse them. They're not going to understand. And it's not necessary. So in other words, that's what he's trying to say. So then he says, here, the average juror does not need expert testimony regarding cell site locations used by wireless phones. He's like, the vast majority of the slides provided by Mr. Peterson contain highly general pictures of cell sites in different locations, seemingly to illustrate the basic point that wireless phones connect to cell towers. So there is no need for expert testimony on this basic principle of daily life in 2022. The last 2 slides in Mr. Peterson's presentation pertain to phone numbers at issue in this case. But the government fails to explain why this is relevant, or even assuming it is relevant, why it is sufficiently precise to be admissible. Cell site records are generally quite broad and can reveal the location of a cell phone user in a city within an area covering between around a dozen and several hundred city blocks. So here he's like, we don't need the expert. We could just use the paperwork, and show that. And that's enough. We don't need the expert. Basically, that's what he's saying. Okay. In this case, the key issue for the jury is whether Mr. Russell placed the so-called threat call, and if so, whether he did so with the intent to make a threat and the understanding it would be perceived as a threat. So notably, Federal Rule of Evidence 704B forbids an expert to testify about whether the defendant did or did not have a mental state that constitutes an element of the crime charged. So those matters are for the tier of fact alone. So Federal Rule Evidence 704B extended opinion testimony by a person anointed by the court as an expert on these topics will not aid the jury in its fact finding, but rather runs the risk of instructing the jury on the existence of the facts needed to satisfy the elements of the offense charge. Accordingly, the government's proposed expert testimony is irrelevant to the jury's determination in this case. B. The expert testimony is inadmissible under Rules 403 and 401. And even if the court were to conclude that the proposed testimony is relevant, Federal Rule of Evidence 403 prohibits the introduction of relevant evidence if there is a danger that is probative value is outweighed by unfair. Give me a second, guys. I got to answer that. All right, guys. Sorry about that, y'all. Y'all already know the life of a mom and the family and the things I got to do behind the scenes. um, we're going to get back to the paperwork. I just received my groceries. So I got to handle something real quick. So in the meantime, I'm going to play two videos. All right, we're going to swap screens. Ooh, I got a head rush. I think I ran too fast. Ooh. I hate that. Okay. I need to check my sugar as well. Okay. Okay. I don't know. I don't remember playing this for you guys. I really don't. I think I did, but I'm not sure. All right. Shout out to Law and Crime. Okay. Ooh, yeah, I'm getting weird right now. Oh, wait, I gotta mute. I gotta go on mute.
We want to switch back now to R. Kelly and that sentencing that just took place in federal court in Brooklyn. R. Kelly, the R&B singer, sentenced to 30 years in prison. We've been telling you this. And it happened just in the last hour or so. Victims, survivors speaking in court, addressing the court, saying some things that were very powerful about their experience with R. Kelly. And R. Kelly maintains that he didn't do anything wrong here. And somebody who knows R. Kelly well is Steve Greenberg. He is his former attorney. He actually withdrew from the case before the trial started, shortly, just weeks before the trial started in federal court last year. Steve, thank you so much for coming on and making time for us this afternoon. We really appreciate it. Your reaction, your thoughts on this 30-year sentence for R. Kelly, your former client.
Well, first of all, I still represent Robert on the state cases here in Illinois.
Okay,
so
I apologize.
Former attorney,
So sorry.
But I didn't do the New York case, and unfortunately, Robert has been plagued by poor choices about people for years. When he went with other counsel for the New York case, I think he made a poor decision because I don't think the court got the right flavor of the case. Look, this case, everyone has heard about R. Kelly, and everyone says he abuses young women. In the case in New York, that wasn't what they prosecuted him for. They prosecuted him for transmitting herpes, for taking someone he lived with lawfully in Illinois to California, I believe to the Grammy Awards, and having sex with her there where it was considered underage sex. I have always thought that the New York prosecution was an abuse of what the law intended for a RICO case. And I think this sentence is just a further abuse of that. All of these people, when you drill down in the discovery, were perfectly happy with their Gucci stuff and their fancy dinners and their private jets and all that. And no one ever complained. They didn't even complain after R. Kelly broke up with them. They didn't complain till years later when it sort of became the thing to do and to dump on R. Kelly. So I think the sentence is just an abomination.
Well, Steve, some people would say, though, that that's part of the grooming process, buying people Gucci, taking them on private jets, showing them this like jet set lifestyle that can, be part of that. I mean, we heard about things like this. We've heard about it in other cases. And,
But let me interrupt you for a sec, okay? Because there wasn't, and no one said that he was grooming people in this case. Let me give you an example. There was a young lady that lived in Houston. She came up to New Jersey with her sister to see R. Kelly perform in concert. He took a liking to her. She went back to Houston. She came back voluntarily. He sent her plane ticket. She came back and she was very open. I wanted to be with this man. That's not grooming. Now, once you're with him, of course, he's a celebrity. He was a rock star. You're going to live that lifestyle. I mean, if he'd have said to somebody, look, I'm going to wear Versace clothes, but you have to wear Levi's and a t-shirt from the Gap because that's just how I am, they would have left him.
Well, so when was the last time you spoke to R. Kelly without, saying anything that's going to violate, attorney-client privilege?
Well, that's really not. I mean, I speak to him.
Okay, how's he doing?
He's doing terrible. He had his entire life taken out from beneath him. This is a man who really should be a billionaire, right? Sold more albums than Whitney Houston, more albums than Michael Jackson. And when I had first met him, he was living in a one-bedroom apartment that he rented because everybody has stolen from him over the years. Everyone has taken advantage of R. Kelly. Now, I understand that some of the choices he made in life are not such good choices. And that in the 90s, maybe he made choices that are now coming back to haunt him. And I think the case here in Chicago might be a little bit different factually than the case in New York. But the case in New York is really where people are capitalizing. All of these people went on this so-called documentary. All of them got wined and dined. Are we going to say the documentary people were grooming them? All of them benefited from dumping on R. Kelly, who's now going to sit in jail for years for what was 95% consensual sex.
Well, 95%, there's still 5% that wouldn't be, if that's what we're arguing here.
Well, no. I'm saying it's 95% consensual sex. There is a 5% of that case that had nothing to do with sex. There was the bribery charge that was in there. That wasn't a sex charge. So all of the predicate acts involved sexual acts except bribery.
So, Steve, it almost sounds like you're saying it just became the in thing to do to accuse R. Kelly of sexual abuse. And transmitting herpes, that is a big deal. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. When you have a sexually transmitted disease, you have a duty to not spread it about and to inform partners of that. So I guess I'm just thinking, so you're thinking, you believe all of these accusers made it all up and just kind of jumped on the bandwagon with one another?
Well, I don't know that they made it all up, but let me, first of all, your sexually transmitted disease. He was prosecuted under a New York misdemeanor statute that had never been used to prosecute anybody. It had been on the books since 1944. Lots of people have given people herpes. Lots of people have given people the clap since 1944, and no one was prosecuted on it. And they made it into a federal crime by claiming that he did it. He crossed state lines. He went to New Jersey. That's how the case ended up there. But let's look at some of the other people. His former girlfriend, Azriel, who was very honest in when she testified, I will say, and she said, my mother sent me to a concert and said, you make this man fall in love with you, you're going to have his babies, you're going to be his girl, so on and so forth. They preyed on him. They preyed on him. And for them to now come to court and say they are victims is just being intellectually dishonest.
But so you're saying that R. Kelly's the victim here?
Absolutely.
The 55-year-old multimillionaire is the victim?
Well, he's not the multimillionaire, but yes, I believe he is a victim of people who wanted the situation, were in this situation. No one complained about anything. That's what people forget. No one complained until agents and prosecutors and TV producers went out and found these people. Nobody had complained. They didn't complain to their friends. They didn't complain to their family. They didn't complain to the media.
Steve, what's next as far as the Illinois case goes? So what are you going to do with that?
Well, his next case is up in Chicago, and I'm trying to provide whatever assistance I can to his attorneys on that case. Obviously, they'll have to evaluate how they're going to move forward with that case after this sentence. I know that he's got very strong attorneys in New York. They wrote a wonderful post-trial motion. I think they're going to win on appeal because I don't think this is actually a RICO case. I don't think there was an enterprise that existed, which would invoke the statute of limitations then, and the case would have to be thrown out. The cases in state court in Illinois, we'll deal with them when they come up. We'll try every one of them and we'll prevail.
Well, I guess we'll wait and see on all of that. So, Steve Greenberg, I know
you're play this clip afterwards.
We will, believe us, we will archive it. We archive everything. We'll wait and see on all of that. Still very serious charges that your client faces, R. Kelly. Child porn charges. It doesn't get more serious than that. So we will wait and see. And we thank you for making time for us on this, what I'm sure is a very busy afternoon for you. Steve Greenberg, attorney for R. Kelly, withdrew from the case in New York, but currently still represents him in other matters. Thank you, Steve.
Thank
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board certified criminal defense lawyer, board certified by the National Board of Trial Advocacy and by the Minnesota State Bar Association as a criminal trial specialist and a criminal law specialist. Today, we're reacting to the sentencing of R. Kelly. Now, let's go back and think about what the hell R. Kelly was charged with. He was charged with a number of counts with a number of victims related to criminal sexual conduct. But it wasn't just straight criminal sexual conduct. It also had to do with some torture, some really vile shit. Now, let me tell you this. I've been doing this for almost 25 years, okay? And criminal sexual conduct cases are something I handle on a regular basis. We just do. I mean, we do that. We do murder cases. We do drug cases. And it's just kind of one of the genres that we handle. And it never ceases to amaze me, the depravity that some people decide to delve in. And, what R. Kelly did was control and humiliation. And he fucking got off on it. I mean, he got off on it because he could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And that's absolute power, and absolute power does what? Corrupts absolutely. So we've got a little video here we'll watch. I haven't seen it yet, but it's we'll just react to the news, and we'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side.
30 years. That's the sentence for singer R. Kelly. The 55-year-old fallen star learned his fate after being convicted of racketeering and sex trafficking.
So racketeering and sex trafficking. Well, sex trafficking, it was the same thing that Ghislaine Maxwell was charged with. But when you have a purpose of an organization, or in this case, his business as a performer, and a part of that business is procuring women, and some of them are underage, for the purpose of sex. The courts, it takes it to a new level. I'll tell you this: homicides are easier to defend than sex cases. They just are. When you hear a homicide, somebody shot somebody. Oh, what happened? Oh, you don't have this. Was it in self-defense? Everybody has a gun. Nobody gives a shit about that. But when your client sits there and they say, what the charges are, criminal sexual conduct in the first degree, blah, blah, blah. And it's a child. Let's say it's a child. And I know some of the kids in this case were underage. and the judge says, whatever the judge says, when that jury looks at your client, guess what? They're picturing him doing that shit. So it's very difficult to dig yourself out of that fucking hole.
Victims spoke about the sentence.
I never thought that I would be here to see him be held accountable.
When you're facing a sentencing on something like this, to be honest with you, there's nothing you can fucking say. So you're better off not saying anything. And he's maintaining his innocence. So the only way to, one of the
I'm eating in the background, guys. My mouth is a little full, but I wanted to say a shout out to this lawyer. His YouTube channel is CLR Bruce Rivers. I put the link in the chat. Please go follow, share, and subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Leave a comment under his comment section of the video, please. Shout out to him. He was real as hell. Okay? Real. He was real as hell.
a sentencing on something like this, to be honest with you, there's nothing you can fucking say. So you're better off not saying anything. And he's maintaining his innocence. So the only way to, one of the factors in deciding whether there's any mitigation is when you have acceptance of responsibility, right? He went to trial, he fucking lost, he's going to appeal. So he's got zero acceptance of responsibility. He's also now a sex offender. When you, and so she's talking about there was part of the process is called allocution. The defendant has a right to say whatever they want to say to the court. And generally, if it's this bad, and especially if you're going to appeal it, you don't have to say anything. But there's another victim impact part of sentencing where the victims get up and first of all, they all testified. So listening to their testimony and having to attack their credibility from a defense lawyer's standpoint is a very tricky thing to do. And it's a very delicate thing to do because if you do it the wrong way, the jury fucking hates your guts and your client is fucked. By listening to them, and I guarantee you during the phase where you have the victim impact, that they get up there and they talk and they talk and they talk, and you just have to sit there and listen. And it's very difficult because usually it's heart-wrenching. You can see that they're almost in tears.
Stand here very proud of my judicial system, very proud of my fellow survivors, and very pleased with the outcome. 30 years did he do this, and 30 years is what he got.
Katie, does this send a message?
Yes, it does. It sends a message to other survivors that, this is a day and time that we're being heard and believed.
The prosecution team says he avoided punishment for decades until today.
R. Kelly is a predator. And as a result of our prosecution, he'll serve a long jail sentence for his crimes.
When I look at what R. Kelly did, I kind of liken it to Jeffrey Epstein, and the whole island thing and how he isolated people. And this, I don't want to say it's worse, but it might have been. And because there was, I think, torture involved. And I mean, I had heard that, they had asked permission to go to the bathroom and they were, basically imprisoned. And so, my heart goes out to these ladies. It does, because and for what? For somebody's sick fucking pleasure. Epstein was the same fucking way, completely narcissistic, and that's what serial rapists and serial killers are the same way. They kill for their own satisfaction. They're consuming human beings, which, there's just no different. There's no end to the variety of depravity in the human condition.
attorney just
Shout out, Mr. Rivers.
after hearing sentencing.
Obviously, he's devastated. 30 years in prison is like a life sentence for him.
Attorney Gloria Allred represents several of the victims.
Not a fan.
While he is in custody, he will not be able to continue to sexually victimize any other underage girls.
We're his sisters.
Also on hand, Kelly's 3 sisters showing their support. If Kelly serves out his entire sentence, he won't be free until he's 85 years old.
So, what do you make of that? 30 years. You know, in some jurisdictions, it would be life. Federally, he could have gotten life. And I'm not sure if he's got any charges elsewhere, but that is a huge sentence, and it's a huge sentence for him, and it's a measure of resolution and closure for the victims in the case. And they are victims. They're 100% victims. But let's hope that they don't let it define them. You know, they like to use the word survivor, and I like that better actually than victim, because it connotes kind of more of a position of strength because they spoke up. I think women should be listened to. Their story needs to stand up to scrutiny, to cross-examination for sure, but they need to be listened to. And hearing these horrific stories from R. Kelly, you know, I'm not going to opine about whether it's a just sentence or not, because it is what it is. And, but you know, when you put your fucking toe in that depravity water, guess what? It's going to catch up with you. It just will, you know? So you're better off if you've got an issue going to get help for it. Otherwise, just be respectful and treat women decently. You know, this is a situation where it just went fucking crazy. And here's the other thing. The guys around him who are helping him procure these ladies were just as guilty as he is. So this has been our reaction to R. Kelly and his sentencing of 30 fucking years. So my hat goes off to Michael Rivers, who's our producer. He and I are just kind of getting back in the swing of things after I've been in trial for a long time. My hat goes off to all you guys for supporting us. Really appreciate it. Just keep it up. So make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon, and spread the word. Stop self-snitching. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal.
Shout out to Bruce Rivers. That was very, very nice of him to say. Shout out to him. Please make sure you subscribe to his channel. Y'all know me. I'm a big baby when it comes to certain things, you know, that touch my heart. And these survivors is one. Thank you, Bruce Rivers, for those kind words at the end on behalf of myself and the survivors of R. Kelly. Thanks. You know, you're right. It's time that women are heard and believed. You know, I know that some women do lie or exaggerate stories because, you know, they might be scorned women, but not every woman is a liar. And it's time that we are more believed. It's time that we stop sweeping things under the rugs for the people that we care about, we love, we know, we trust. It's time, that everyone goes down. It's time that everyone goes down. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to mine. It's okay. It's okay. One passed away, and the others, I just don't know where they are. I don't even know what their last names are. Like, we grew up in the neighborhood, and I knew who they were, but I don't remember what their last names are. I don't remember none of that. So, this is the Me Too era, Time's Up era. And it's time that people stand side by side with women and believe women. Give me a second, guys. Mama Rogers, you already know. Girl. Dealing with this case has really taught me a lot. And my heart breaks for all these girls. And like I said, it's time. It's time, and people are upset about it. Oh, well, times have changed. Welcome to the new world. Okay. So I got a chance to eat my lunch and put away groceries, guys. Thank you. All right. So let's continue. I believe I read this whole thing, right? Yeah, probative value. Yeah, okay. All right. Then it says that if the government does specify a relevant use for the proposed testimony regarding the cell site and GPS data, the court should order a Dubert hearing. Oh, something new. Hold on, I've never heard of this word before. That's something I'm going to look up. The court should order a Dubert hearing to determine the precision or imprecision imprecision of the government's methodology to satisfy the as yet unspecified evidentiary function. And then it cites a law. And C, the expert disclosure is insufficient. Furthermore, notwithstanding the arguments above, Mr. Peterson's testimony should also be excluded because the government's disclosure is not sufficiently complete under Rule 16. The Federal Rules Advisory Committee envisioned very broad discovery production with respect to experts. A law review article cited by the advisory committee with approval speaks of the need for extensive discovery and notes that the argument for pretrial discovery in this context is powerful and the arguments against discovery are virtually non-existent. Paul C. G. Anelli, Criminal Discovery, Scientific Evidence, and DNA, 44 Vand, L. Rev. 791799. Okay, some case law, I guess, a case, cited with approval in the Federal Rule Criminal Procedure 16 Advisory Committee Note of 1993 Amendment. I like choked on my own saliva. What the hell? That was crazy. Okay, excuse me, guys. The article also recognizes that mere notice that an expert will testify, while critical to trial preparation, is insufficient. The opposing party needs to know both the substance of the expected testimony and the qualifications of the proposed expert. So the current discovery rules on scientific reports provide for neither of these necessities. The typical laboratory report contains only a bare conclusion. It is not unusual for the report merely to summarize the results of an unidentified test conducted by an anonymous technician. Then it cites another law. It says that the disclosure provided under the rules should be sufficiently complete to advance the purpose of the rule. Disclosure must be thorough enough to permit defense counsel to prepare effective cross-examination, as envisioned when the amendment to Rule 16 was adopted. See Federal Rule Criminal Procedure 16 Advisory Committee, Note 1993. The amendment is intended to provide the opponent with a fair opportunity to test the merit of the expert's testimony through focused cross-examination. Any notice should be sufficiently complete for defense counsel to anticipate and effectively object to areas of potentially inadmissible testimony prior to rather than during trial. Okay, so explaining that they're entitled to right to object to this stuff before the trial. The second of these considerations is especially important when, as here, the expert's testimony will touch on new or controversial techniques or opinions. Here, the government's notice fails to sufficiently identify or disclose Mr. Peterson's specific opinions, the data underlying them, the methods underlying them. Now, the government has simply provided a broad overview of cell site technology and several rudimentary graphics listing dates, phone numbers, and locations. This information does not reveal how Mr. Peterson analyzed this information, reached these conclusions, or even what his specific conclusions are. So without further disclosure, Mr. Russell will be denied adequate time and ability to prepare further objections and cross-examinations at trial. Conclusion. For all the foregoing reasons, Mr. Russell respectfully requests that the court preclude Mr. Peterson's expert testimony at trial. And that is that. So now, this was actually number 48, and this was also produced on the June 27th of 2022. And this is a letter to pursuant to Rule 16, okay, which is what we were just talking about with the cell site and all of that. So the government hereby provides notice of the expert testimony that it currently expects to offer at trial in the above referenced case. So the government reserves the right to call additional expert witnesses and will promptly provide notice if it elects to do so. So the government also requests reciprocal discovery as set forth below. So here they're asking for discovery. Radio frequency design engineering, the cell site location expert. Okay, so the government expects to call professional engineer Andrew Peterson from DBM Engineering to testify about cellular network operations, including but not limited to their design, the coverage, the testing, and performance. Mr. Peterson is expected to testify, for example, that each cellular service provider's network consists of cell sites, which are designed to provide service to the provider's customers in a given area. 2, providers locate, arrange, and optimize cell sites with the goal of ensuring sufficient geographical coverage and capacity to service all users. 3, to accomplish these goals in densely populated urban environments, service providers place multiple cell sites, each of which is intended to service a relatively small geographical area that typically spans a few city blocks. So depending on the surrounding geography and topography and topography and the proximity of nearby sites, 4, wireless devices, including cell phones, are designed to meet universal industry protocols by which phones connect to cell site that provides the strongest and clearest signal, which is often but not always the nearest site. So these protocols are a necessity within the industry because they allow cell networks to reliably, predictably, and efficiently service customers and allow for wireless device interoperability across different sites, regions, and manufacturers. So analyzing cell site location data obtained from service providers is a reliable way to approximate the geographical area or range within which a wireless device was likely located at the time of the connection to the cell site, including for wireless devices serviced by T-Mobile, Sprint, AT&T, and Verizon in or about 2018. So Mr. Peterson's circulum vitae is attached, and it describes his training, education, and experience. The government is also aware of certain prior court cases in which Mr. Peterson testified as an expert in radio frequency design. Please note that this list is provided as a courtesy and is merely a representative sample, not a comprehensive list of Mr. Peterson's prior testimony. So, in other words, this is just a sample of his credentials. It's not the full thing. So, the government expects Mr. Peterson to offer an expert opinion about the likely approximate locations of various cell phones relevant to this case at the times they connected to cell sites in December of 2018. So, as a general introduction to the subject matter, Mr. Peterson will likely testify that cellular phones and networks are designed for phones to connect to cell sites that provides the strongest and clearest signal, and that is often the site is closest geographic proximity because, as a matter of physics, and redeductible to a mathematical formula. So, yeah, blah, 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 blah. So this means that location records from such omni sites, given no indication of the phone's direction at the time of the connection, but indicate that the phone was likely closer than halfway to the next nearest cell site in any direction. Then finally, based on his review of certain historical cell site data obtained from various cell phone providers, which were previously disclosed to you, Mr. Peterson will likely testify concerning his expert opinion of the location of those cell phones at multiple times on or about December 4th of 2018. We are attaching a draft presentation of what we expect Mr. Peterson to testify to during trial. We will provide additional materials closer to trial. Now, Mr. Peterson is expected to base these opinions on training, education, and experience, including his work in the radio frequency engineering field and his participation in drive tests conducted for the purpose of evaluating cellular network performance through real-time tracking of cellular devices, network connections, as well as various engineering and technical principles relating to radio frequencies and cellular network design and operations that he has worked with and relied on throughout his career. So they're also demanding for reciprocal discovery and expert notice. So in light of your request for the foregoing notice, the government hereby requests reciprocal notice. So the government is requesting discovery from the defendant. That's what's happening here. So in light of your request for the foregoing notice, the government hereby requests reciprocal notice under Federal Rule Criminal Procedure 16, B, 1, and C, regarding any expert witness that the defendant intends to rely upon, including a written summary of any testimony that the defendant intends to use under Rule 702, 703, and 705 of the Federal Rules of Evidence. So such summary must describe the witness's opinions, the basis and reasons for those opinions, and the witness's qualifications. Additionally, the government reiterates its request for reciprocal discovery under Federal Rule Criminal Procedure 16B. Specifically, we request that you allow inspection and copying of any books, papers, documents, data, photographs, tangible objects, buildings or places, or copies or portions thereof, which are in the defendant's possession, custody, or control, and which the defendant intends to introduce as evidence or otherwise rely on at trial. And 2, any results of or reports of physical or mental examinations and of scientific tests or experiments made in connection with this case, or copies thereof, which are in the defendant's possession or control, and which the defendant intends to introduce as evidence or otherwise rely on at trial, or which were prepared by a witness whom the defendant intends to call at trial. The government also reiterates its request that the defendant disclose prior statements of any witnesses he will call to testify, including expert witnesses. Truly yours, Damian Williams. So, as you know, that's the government. The United States Attorney is Damian Williams. And the assistants are Peter and Laura. So they are asking for discovery from John Russell. Exhibit A. Now, this is his Mr. Peterson's resume. Okay. And more of his, this is the call detail records, which is known as CDR analysis. So this is for the phone numbers analyzed and the time period. U.S. versus Russell, prepared by Andrew Peterson. And the date of the report was on May 24th of 2022. And here we have an exhibit, the cell sites in suburban rural areas. So these are what the cell sites look like. Okay, so this is just an example of what the cell sites look like. Then this is cell sites in urban areas in New York. So they'll be on top of a building like this. You see how the white is there? That's how it is here above the store, the T-Mobile store. Then this is an example of a rooftop cell site at 42060 Broadway, New York, New York. This is in Manhattan, New York City. And it has 3 sectors, and then it shows equipment platform. So these are sectors of sites, I guess, and this is the actual platform where the equipment is laid. And this is example sector azimuth orientation. I don't know what this means. I guess as you can see here, it's showing degrees. So I'm gathering they're showing you degrees of where the sites are. And this is another cell location. And it's telling you where. The cell site here. And then shaded area represents direction of sector, not coverage area. Then it says center of sector known as azimuth. Okay. And here they say they show the cell site location utilized by a phone number. And then there's another location highlighted in green with a location as well. And the location here is Whitestone, Cross Island Parkway, College Point. That's Queens. That's in the borough of Queens. Then here is cell site location utilized by 3 different phone numbers with 312 area codes, red, orange, and purple. And these were used on December 4th at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So Lawndale, North Lawndale, what is this? West 13th Street, West 21st Street. So this is certain parts of Queens. So they show you here a call was made from the records over here in this area here where it's orange, and then red where the red numbers are, and purple for the purple number. So that is that. And then here, the defendant Russell put in a notice of motion in limine to preclude witness testimony characterizing a communication as a threat. So now he comes in to say, please take notice that upon the accompanying memorandum of law, defendant Don Russell, pursuant to 701 of the Federal Rules of Evidence, will move the court before the Honorable Paul G. Gaddafi at the United States Courthouse, 500 Pearl Street. And it was signed by Michael Friedman. And it's for an order precluding witness testimony characterizing a communication as a threat. Then Don Russell puts in the memorandum in support of the motion in limine to preclude the witness testimony characterizing a communication as a threat. So now they want to get rid of another witness. And it says that this case centers on a single phone call that the government alleges. 1. Mr. Russell placed to a Newhouse staff member. And 2. Contains a threat of physical harm. For the jury to decide that call contains a threat, the jury will have to decide if an ordinary, reasonable recipient, a reasonable recipient would interpret it as a true threat. The government intends to call the Newhouse staff member to testify. And by this motion, Mr. Russell seeks to limit the scope of the proposed testimony to preclude the staff member from testifying that the phone call constituted a threat, as that is the ultimate issue for the jury. Argument. Federal Rule of Evidence 701 provides as follows, that if a witness is not testifying as an expert, testimony in form of an opinion is limited to one that is A, rational based upon the witness's perception, B, helpful to clearly understand the witness's testimony or to determine a fact in issue, and C, not based on scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge within the scope of Rule 702. Also, lay opinion testimony is not inadmissible solely because it addresses the ultimate issue in the case. And then it shows Weinstein's federal evidence, collecting case, Crawford case. And then it states that a lay witness may testify as to an ultimate issue of fact so long as the testimony is otherwise admissible. The lay witness may not, however, testify as to a legal conclusion, such as the correct interpretation of a contract. Citation omitted. Courts may properly be wary, however, of admitting lay opinion testimony when its sole function is to answer the same question that the trier of fact is to consider in its deliberations. Such testimony may be excluded as unhelpful. And then it cites Weinstein's federal evidence again. Says that lay opinion does not assist the trier of fact when the testimony relates to an issue such as credibility of witnesses. That is usually reserved exclusively to the trier of fact for decision, or the testimony merely tells the trier of fact how to decide the case. Then it cites Weinstein again. In general, testimony that simply tells the juror how to decide is not considered helpful as lay opinion. Okay. Here the jury, for the jury to decide that the phone call constituted a threat, it will have to decide if it was made under such circumstances that an ordinary, reasonable recipient familiar with the context of the communication would interpret it as a true threat. So, as distinguished from idle or careless talk, exaggeration or something said in a joking manner, thus to be a crime. He's trying to say that Don's gonna say he was joking? Really? I just called over there to, just exaggerate and just, he, April Fools. Really? Thus, to be a crime, the threat on its face and in the circumstances in which it is made must be so unequivocal, unconditional, immediate, and specific as to the entity threatened as to convey to an ordinary, reasonable recipient a gravity of purpose and an imminent prospect of execution. Lord mercy. See defendant's request to charge, threat to injury, citing Avenatti, citing Sand, and addressing whether a threat was transmitted in interstate or foreign commerce in the context of 875C. United States versus Jordan, jury charge at 16 to 17. Same reasonable recipient tests unnecessary to prove intent or ability to carry out. Right. So United States versus Kellner talks about 875C charge. Specific intent or ability to carry out threat are unnecessary, defining true threat. And then it says also the Sand instruction 31-8, defining threat in the context of 875C. A threat is a serious statement expressing an intention to inflict bodily harm or kill or kidnap at once or in the future, as distinguished from idle or careless talk. Dubowski is charged with that same thing, 875. He's charged with that same thing. For a statement to be a threat, the statement must have been made under such circumstances that a reasonable person who heard or read the statement would understand it as a serious expression of an intent to inflict bodily injury or murder or kidnap. In addition, the defendant must have made the statement intending it to be a threat or with the knowledge that the statement would be viewed as a threat. So to determine whether or not the defendant made a threat, you should consider the circumstances under which the statement was made, including its context with respect to surrounding conversation, the language the defendant used, and the reaction of those who heard or read the statement. It is not necessary that the government prove that the defendant intended to carry out the threat or that he had the present ability to carry it out in the future. The defendant's statement may be a threat even if it was never communicated nor intended to be communicated to the target of the threat. Thus, the jury will have to make a determination whether the phone call contained the threat to an objective listener and whether the person making the phone call subjectively intended the statement to be understood as a threat. So testimony by the staff member who received the phone call that the phone call contained the threat and was intended to understood as a threat will not relate to issue that the jury requires assistance in determining. The staff member may testify regarding the context and circumstances surrounding the phone call, including the language the speaker used and the staff member's own reaction. But the staff member may not offer his own opinion whether that call contained a threat, because that is the ultimate factual issue for the jury to determine. For example, whereas the staff member may testify to what he heard on the call was a threat or that he called 911 because of a threat. Indeed, as will be discussed further in Mr. Russell's opposition to the government's motion in limine to admit the 911 call recording, it would be especially problematic to admit the 911 recording in which the staff person refers to the call he received as a threat. So Don the Con wants the 911 call tape to be removed, as well as this employee. that paperwork that the government submitted should be enough. They don't even need the expert. They don't need the expert. They don't need the employee. They don't need the 911 call. Ah, man. Allowing the witness to go so far as to label the call a threat, either through live testimony or through the otherwise inadmissible 911 call recording, would be of no benefit to the jury, other than simply suggesting how the jury should evaluate the evidence. In conclusion, for all the foregoing reasons, Mr. Russell respectfully urges the court preclude the staff member from testifying that the phone call constituted a threat. And that is the end of that. That is funny. What do you guys think about all that? Oh, Lord. Okay, meeting time for me. Okay. Hey, good afternoon, Miss Married. Hey, Miss, what's up, baby boy? Hey, honey. Hi, Tanya. Hey, Jade. How's everybody? Hey, honey bunny. What's up, Charlotte? And rocking with the truth. What's up, lady? What's up, T-Bam? Hey, Sin. Hey, Tanbella. Did I say hi to Les Smith? Okay. Hey, Les Smith. So, this is what's going on so far with Donnell Russell. All right. I'm going to give myself a break. I might come back later on, guys, to read a couple of more documents, okay? So, in the meantime, let me remind you guys to please, if you are interested in donating to the transcript fund, please hit my Cash App, my PayPal, and my Cash App is Diva Divine Light, as well as my PayPal. It's Diva Divine Light. My Zelle information is in the About section of my channel. Okay. There it is right there on the screen. Okay. Donations are appreciated for the transcripts for the August trial, which is supposed to start on the 15th. But honestly, I don't know if that's going to happen. I think they might want to push it till the end of August. Not sure, but this is what I'm feeling. I'm getting this feeling. I don't know. It's just my opinion. So if you guys would like to donate for the transcript fund, please do so. And we can get these transcripts as they come out for the Chicago federal trial in the Northern District of Illinois. Okay. So guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Y'all already know. And please make sure when you do, put in the line that says for, or message or whatever, however it says, please put for transcripts so that I don't get confused with money that you guys are donating to me personally. Like you could say $10 is for you and $20 is for the transcript, you know, or $10 for you and $10 for the transcript, you know, or here, $50 for the transcript. You know, just make sure you distinguish what the money is for, okay? Because I'm stashing stuff into a savings account. So far, we're at $230. So we're close to getting one transcript for one day. Okay? All righty. So, guys, please do me a favor. Make sure you hit that like button on your way out. Don't forget. And please subscribe to the channel for those who are new and you are not subscribed and you're watching and you're liking. Thumbs up the video. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell. Make sure you put it on all. And, you know, for those who are watching the replay, if you want to leave a comment to the video, please leave a respectful comment in the comment section below. Thank you very, very much, guys. And Diva Divine Light is out. Peace.